Deadpool and Wolverine is looking to be a massive cameo fest, introducing mutants from across the X-Men franchise into the MCU. So, which villains do we hope will make an appearance? I mean, don't be silly. If neither Ian McKellen nor Michael Fassbender show up as Magneto in Deadpool and Wolverine, I think people might just throw a fit. Magneto was an absolutely amazing character in both portrayals of the character and supremely iconic to the X-Men franchise as a whole. In a movie absolutely stacked with cameos and returning characters, it just makes sense that one or both of these actors would show up even for just a few seconds in this film. And if it doesn't happen, well, prepare for that because it's totally possible it would just kind of sting a little bit. Luckily, I think the rest of the movie will be absolutely amazing anyways. Next up, the Juggernaut is one of Marvel's biggest powerhouses who has made surprisingly few appearances in the X-Men movies. The character infamously first appeared in X-Men The Last Stand, portrayed by Vinnie Jones, and God, I would absolutely die if he came back for this movie. And he better say that damn line again. You know which one I'm talking about. With Ryan Reynolds being a big fan of English football clubs, I could see it maybe happening, but Ryan did portray the Unstoppable Force in the previous Deadpool film, so I have an inkling he might do the same thing here, giving us the Juggernaut for the third time on the big screen. Either way, Juggy needs more live-action representation in general. Now, some on-set photos from back in December showed Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds in character as the respective X-Men anti-heroes Wolverine and Deadpool fighting Sabertooth. The pictures showed Wolverine fighting with Tyler Mane's version of Sabertooth from the very first X-Men movie, and another picture showed that fight ended with Sabertooth's head no longer attached to his body. First of all, I didn't see these pictures until today, but second of all, I absolutely loved that I did. While he didn't talk much, I thought he physically captured Sabertooth so well. Apparently, the mutant Toad, who was played by Darth Maul actor Ray Park, was also spotted on set, although no photos of that X-Men villain were publicly shared online. At this time, it is unknown if Mane and Park have actually both returned for Deadpool 3, though the former appears to be back as his version of Sabertooth. But okay, if that version of Sabertooth is kind of confirmed, I have one wish: leave Schreiber's Sabertooth. While Taylor Mane had the physical imposing nature of Sabertooth, Leave had the absolute antagonistic, sadistic nature of Sabertooth down pat. I loved Sabertooth in X-Men Origins Wolverine. I was almost sad to see him go, and that is how you know you have nailed a villain. I feel like if we have one version of Sabertooth, we have to have the other, especially when that version of Sabertooth was just so good. Now, I'm not personally sure if Leave has been spotted on set or confirmed as a cast member, but I would welcome seeing him with open arms, as I'm sure a lot of other X-Men fans would as well. But in the same vein as Sabertooth though, Mystique has also had a pretty prominent role in both the X-Men movie franchise as well as the X-Men comics as a major villain. The thing is, we may not even know if she appears because that's kind of her whole thing, appearing as other people. Though, I doubt this will be the case here if she does appear. If Mystique does appear in Deadpool and Wolverine, which I really hope she does, I do hope we get to see her in her blue form, maybe finally suited up in her classic white costume with the boots and the gloves and the thing. I love that costume, although who she will be played by is totally up in the air. Jennifer Lawrence would be cool, but I feel like that's a little less likely and a whole lot more expensive than getting Rebecca Romijn back. Either way, I do hope that Mystique will be showing up as well. X-Men Origins Wolverine is definitely the black sheep of the X-Men and specifically Wolverine franchise. It gets a lot of hate, and some would say it's well deserved. Even Deadpool has made fun of it in his own movies, but if I'm being honest, it's got its shining moments. I already mentioned Lee Schreiber's Sabertooth, but there are a few characters who could get a second shot at doing their characters justice. For example, Kevin Durand as the Blob. The Blob, or Frederick Dukes, is incredibly durable and can essentially become immovable by creating a monodirectional increase of gravity beneath him. He's a great villain that is tragically underutilized in both the comics a little bit and obviously the movies. With the way Deadpool pokes fun at that movie, I could easily see them pulling the Blob into Deadpool and Wolverine to do his character justice. But one other character who made a big splash in that movie, who has appeared and been referenced many a times by Deadpool, is actually Deadpool, or whatever you want to call that monstrosity. Deadpool fans were incredibly scarred by the original portrayal of Deadpool by Ryan Reynolds in Wolverine Origins, who started off pretty great, but ended with a sewed-up mouth, weird tattoos, and retractable arm blades. Given the way Deadpool has constantly made fun of this version of the character, it would be so fitting for him to actually show up in Deadpool and Wolverine as a villain. They would just have to work around the fact that Deadpool actually popped a cap in his dome at the end of the second movie, but with the TVA involved, that's pretty easy to do. Now, while Origins Wolverine is the black sheep of the franchise, the Wolverine is the invisible sheep. I feel like no one talks about that movie, and I'm going to assume it's because it was actually pretty decent, but I guess not like outstanding. So we all recognize that it's good, but not great. I don't know. Tell me your thoughts down below. Either way, it would be really nice to see some characters from that movie actually make an appearance in Deadpool and Wolverine. Dr. Green, aka Viper, was the main antagonist of that film, allying herself with the Silver Samurai. Obviously, Viper wasn't the most popular villain at the time, but given that we know a handful of minor villains are appearing in the movie, like Azazel, Pyro, and Lady Deathstrike, it would be cool to see her also show up among them. Or for at least a cameo. Now, I know that both Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds said that they would not be touching the ending of Logan, which was an absolutely beautiful send-off for the Wolverine character. But I gotta say, that movie had some excellent villains, with one of the most terrifying actually being a clone of Wolverine himself, X-24. This would be the absolute easiest of all the villains to do, but it could be one of the most gratifying. I doubt it would actually happen, but X-24 actually made a big impression on me specifically when I watched Logan, which is funny considering it's just buzz cut Hugh Jackman. He just carried such a terrifying air to him that gave me the heebie-jeebies. He was incredibly capable, and he ultimately ended the mainline Wolverine for good at the end of the movie. But if Hugh could pull off that for a second time, it might give this alternate disgraced Wolverine in Deadpool 3 a great way to get some redemption. And finally, do you remember in X-Men The Last Stand during that final battle at Alcatraz where you had tons of mutants who we hadn't actually seen before fighting off against the X-Men? Do you remember the guy who went to go fight Wolverine who had an incredibly fast healing factor when every time Wolverine cut off one of his arms he would just regrow that arm and punch Wolverine? Then Wolverine like kicked him in the gonads and said, "Grow those back." Do you remember that guy? Well, his name is Starfish. During the second Deadpool and Wolverine trailer, in the shot with the giant Ant-Man head that we see, we also see a bunch of returning villains from the X-Men franchise. Lady Deathstrike, Azazel, Callisto, we see them all here, and then there is one bald character who people haven't quite been able to place just yet. Well, one option could be Starfish, and given how hilarious and ridiculous that scene was, I think it would be super fitting for him to show up in Deadpool and Wolverine. But what do you guys think? Let us know down in the comments, because this is the end of the video. Thank you guys so much for watching today on Top 10 Nerd. I'm your host Adam Andrews. I will catch you nerds on the flippy flop. Stay safe, and as always, peace out, nerds.